Hi everybody, welcome back to this week's Chasing Psychological Safety video. This week we're wanting to talk to you about the importance of engagement in teams. And we know that engagement is a term that's bandied around a lot. It's used a lot in most organizations. Lots of engagement surveys are being used. So we want to talk about it a bit differently and the way that we use that term differently today. First of all, one of the things that we've seen that might seem obvious, but to us it's really been reinforced over the last few years, is the strong correlation between engagement and psychological safety. And when we're talking about engagement, we're talking about engaged teams and the link between that and psychological safety. But importantly, we've always defined engagement, and if you remember, engagement is one of the 6 components of psychological safety that we have in the psychological safety dashboard, differently to the way it's usually used in organizations. You know, how engaged are you with management, or would you recommend this organization to another team, to somebody you know? The way that we look at engagement is the emotional bond and connection between a group of people, i.e. the team that you are working in. So how strong is that real emotional bond that you have with each other? And what we see is when you define engagement in that way and work on engagement in that way, how that bond can really power a team and give them much more buy-in and codependency on each other and wanting to work together. One of the things that we've also found, some really interesting things that we've been thinking about with regards to engagement, is that whilst it seems really obvious that you want teams to know each other well, to understand about each other's personal lives, to be able to have that emotional connection and that openness and honesty with each other, teams aren't as close as we thought. So often we're talking to teams who think they have a close bond, think they're engaged, but when we actually kind of get under the skin and start working out if there is that bond there, it's not as strong or as well worked on as perhaps you might think. COVID has given us some more permission. COVID has given us permission to ask those questions. It's given us that window into each other's homes. It's given us that need to talk about our personal lives and our family situations. And that's been incredibly healthy. But now that work needs to continue. We keep talking about how the window of opportunity following COVID is closing on things like flexible working and remote working. This is another one of those windows that we need to really keep open. So we're talking about engagement as emotional connection. We're talking about wanting to and needing to do more of that work in teams, and the really strong correlation between engagement and psychological safety.
Exactly. And what we were saying in yesterday's article is that if you are a client already, then please don't overlook this play. We realize you've done some of this work already through the other plays. You would have touched on it in the empathy hackathon. You would have done some of it in your team relaunches. There may have been some discussion in the Bitch Fest, and certainly having opened the space by having used our software, you would have had a lot of this connection having grown stronger. With that said, it's worth it that you do this play anyway. So that's a piece of advice for our existing clients. In particular, if you have new people coming in, and let's face it, we're looking at more and more mobility because of this, the intransigence towards the place of work and so on that we see in some enterprises. So when you have new people coming in, when there are changes, think of doing another one of these new exercises that we've created. I don't even know if we've announced this properly, called Team Equals Family. So what we've done is we've taken into account the fact that teams were not as close as we would have liked, as Fionn explained, how important it is that they are closer. And then we have decided that we're going to create this play called the Team Equals Family exercise. And in that one, that I was advising our clients to do, what we have is essentially a structured discussion that gives you a framework to ask and find out the things that would put you in a position to be slightly closer faster. If you wish, it's a more concentrated version of what you would have found out in 10 years of boiling the same kettle in the same office with the same team. And none of us has that type of setup anymore. That's not going to be the case in our new virtual world. It's not going to be the case in our in the way we are part of multiple teams. It's not going to be the case in the huge mobility. So we will never have that luxury of time and of growing all together. And that's how come we have come to be familiar with the intimate details of each other's private lives. We have to instead attempt to create that close bond faster so that we can actually build on it to get psychological safety. So if you are a client, do it anyways. If you're not a client, in this play that we're talking about, just to give you a couple of pointers, maybe you can use these on your own. Approach it with a lens of, we need to know about each other as much as we would know if we were to be on a couples games quiz show, where we would get asked blind questions about each other and we'd be able to answer. In the sense of, we should all know data about our team members. We should know about their immediate families. We should ideally know about their extended families to a degree. We should know their names, their ages, at the very minimum, kind of where they met and whether or not they're coupled or not. Those very basic details of our setups are important. And then there are other things that are the makeup of that individual that can and should be asked about. You know, how many places have they lived in? What do they enjoy doing? What is, kind of what are their, what do they do to decompress? What are their hobbies and so on? These are things that should be absolutely basal and we should know them. And if you're going to structure that type of a conversation, approach it as if people would be, first of all, filling in, if you wish, like almost the equivalent of a dating online profile, but for each other in the team. After which, take it a step further and imagine now what would we say to each other, which is not public for the internet, but just for us over a beer. So names, ages, but also things that are intimately true for each of you. And your goal is that you're able to kind of replace each other. Imagine a team leader would be missing from, a team member would be missing from these meetings, that any of you would be able to kind of fill in these blanks for them. That's a good test that you're doing the right thing. So we wish you the best of luck of creating closer and tighter bonds. We all need it. Do not impression manage against prying or looking like you're trying to intrude into people's lives. Leave that aside. Intrude, it's important, and find out about each other, care enough to find out, and you'll see that your performance will improve. Have a lovely week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.